Hi, AJ Hartley here, novelist, Shakespeare professor, fan of various aspects of Japanese music and culture, including dance vocal band Atarashii Gakko, and I'm talking today to the translator of my Hideki Smith series, Niwa Masayuki, about my interaction with Atarashii Gakko, how I came to give them a copy of my book, and why it mattered to me.
2023年11月の新しい学校のアメリカでのコンサートに AJ が行った時の動画があります。ライブが終わった後のフォトセッションの映像なので公開しても良いだろうと判断しました。AJ が鈴鹿に秀樹スミスの本をプレゼントして鈴鹿が喜んでいます。すごく楽しい映像です。では、早速見てみましょう。その後で話を聞きます。
Present for us?
Yes!
Oh, thank you, thank you. Beautiful job. Take a picture, okay? 3, 2, 1, hey, cheese! Wow. Wow.
すごいね。
すごい。あなたは鈴鹿に手が届くような最前列にいますね。
Yes. And one of the things she always does, for at certain songs in either Free Your Mind or 999, she comes into the audience. And so, and people have to carry her through. And so I was right next to her. When she was standing in the audience, I had to hold her leg to hold her in position so she wouldn't fall.
まずこのコンサートのことを簡単に説明してください。
So I had been following Atarashii Gakko for about, well, 5 years now. And so I had been making videos about them for at least that long. And I think I might have been like the first person to make any sort of video content on YouTube about them in English because they were not really well known at all in 2020 when I started following them. And I had always hoped that I would get to see them live, but I assumed that I would only be able to see them in Japan. And then when they signed with 88 Rising and they started doing festivals, and they did a couple of festivals in California, the Head in the Clouds festival with other Asian acts, but they didn't travel. They didn't move around the country. They didn't do a tour. And then, somewhat surprisingly, in 2023, without any warning, they announced that they were going to do a tour. And my wife and I grabbed tickets very quickly because they were playing very, very small venues because they were not well known. So we saw them in Washington, DC. And as you can see, it was, I don't know, there were a few hundred people in the audience, a very, very small venue. The stage was very low. There was no barrier between the stage and the audience. And when I first arrived, I was worried that the stage was not big enough for them to do their usual performances, you know. But yeah, we were right at the front. The concert was amazing. It was one of the most fun concerts I've ever been to because it was so unexpected. You know, I never thought I would get to see them like that. I never thought I would see them so close. And the audience was really excited because the only people who showed up were fans, you know, were real fans, not casual observers. And they played, this was after the Pineapple Cryptid, the Snack Time EP. What else had they done at that point? The new album was not out yet. So they had just released Tokyo Calling, which was their big single at the time. So they played all that stuff and it was great. And then, and as you see, I got to meet them briefly and I was able to give them the book at the end. At the first, we were told we couldn't give them gifts or anything like that. But at the end, because we were so close, I just put the book on the stage as a gift, and I had signed it to each of them. Suzuka was the one who picked it up, but I had signed the book to all four of them. So yeah, I was excited. I think that there's a lot of things in the book which fits with their ideology, the way that they think about youth and being connected to tradition, but still individuals and making your own way in the world, which I think is a theme of the book. And of course, obviously, it's connected to Japanese culture, but Atarashii Gakko are very, very Japanese in certain respects and slightly unconventional in others. So again, I think that fits the book nicely. So I was really excited to be able to give them a copy.
5年前に知ったということですけれども、どういうきっかけで5年前に知ったんですか？
I honestly don't know. I think I had been reconnecting with Japanese music. I had been paying a lot of attention to Baby Metal and a few other groups, Polka Dot Stingray, for example. And I discovered these guys just by searching around the internet, and somehow I found a link that connected me to one of their performances. It's not just that it's insightful and interesting and clever, which it is, but it's fun and it's great to watch, and you should go out and get more stuff by these guys because they're awesome. They had released Otonna Buru, which became their huge single. But at that time, it was unknown. And it didn't really get discovered until what, last year? It didn't blow up in Japan until a year or so ago, fed mostly by TikTok videos and things and people imitating the song. And then it became a big deal. But at the time, it was unknown. So I think that part of the issue was that we had just hit the pandemic. And so all the live performances had closed down and they became much more focused on making individual videos, small videos that launched their profile. On receiving word that they had received 1 million views on YouTube, they responded thus.
Thank you! 1 million views! 5, 6, 7, 8, スクール学校スクール学校あらどこいスクール学校スクール学校あらどこいわっジャギンジャギンイエーイ 1 million 1 million
How awesome is that? Okay. I think it was luck that I found them. I guess I was looking through groups that were doing similar kinds of music and that led me to them. But yeah, at the time they did not have a footprint. Certainly they didn't really have a footprint in the West. They didn't have much of a footprint in Japan. They had released the first 2 albums, but the albums had not, I mean, I think they had effectively been dropped by their record label at this point. I don't think the albums had performed as well as the record label had hoped. And now they're huge.
特にこの AG に惹かれた理由は何ですか？他にもいろいろグループがありますけれども、特に AG に惹かれたのは何ですか？
I think that because they're not an idol group, because I think there's a much more genuine sense of real personality and creativity that comes from them. They're not simply the front people for a large organization, for a management company or something. That it's become clear to me watching them over the last few years, particularly, that they have much more agency, much more control of their own material, and that material reflects their own interests and personalities. And there's a real sort of new, youthful energy that I find fascinating and compelling. And as I say, in some ways they're very Japanese, hence the school uniforms and so forth. But in other ways, they're always sort of pushing against the limits of conventional ideas about Japanese society and culture and their idea about standing out, right? I mean, we know the old expression about the nail that stands up gets hammered down, right? In Japan. And they represent the opposite of that. That while still holding on to something which is very Japanese, they also stand up for individuality, personal creativity, and a more expansive notion of society and culture, which I find really interesting. And I think this is very much a Gen Z. Do you use that term in Japan? I don't know. We talk about Gen X, right? And the youngest generation, I think, it has different ideas, different attitudes as they sort of push against certain elements of traditional Japanese culture. Yeah. So I find that fascinating, but I think that their choreography is amazing. They're great dancers. I love Suzuka's vocal in particular, the range of it, the power and depth of it. So I think they are real artists.
つまり、プロデューサーとかによって作られたグループではないということですね。彼ら自身の意思によって作ったグループという意味ですね。
I think so. I think originally they would have been put together more like a conventional idol group, but I think it quickly became clear that what they were good at was following their own path.
うん、
And and I love those first two albums because they're so musically diverse and interesting, and they have a very kind of acid jazz sort of feel, which is very unconventional for idol type bands. But I think that as time has passed, it has become clear that their strength is their individual personality and so on, and their own style and interests. And the current management has embraced that and let them run with it.
えっと、ベビーメタルの場合は、少しプロダクションによって作られたように見えます。しかし、AG の場合は完全に彼ら独自で作ったというふうに見えますね。
Yeah, I think that, it's often hard to get Japanese groups to speak honestly about how they were formed.
うん
Um, because I think everybody wants to present the impression of a more organic
うん
origin and a less produced origin. But that's is my sense that as you know, with baby metal, there were initially a subset of Sakura Gakuen, effectively, and they were very much put together, assembled by a manager, a producer who shaped the future of the group. And it still seems to me that that management direction is very uh, much a force within baby metal. But yeah, I think with AG, partly because they were so small, right? In terms of overall visibility, one of the reasons that they were able to control their own destiny is that nobody cared.
うん
They were able to do their own thing because they were not getting a lot of attention, a lot of scrutiny,
う
you
ん
know. And in part, coming to the West, getting representation by 88 Rising, who specialize in breaking Asian acts outside Japan. And I think that that meant that what people responded to was their individualism and creativity in a different way, and that gave them a huge boost. A little while ago, when they did the recorded the Snack Time EP that has Pineapple Kryptonite and a number of other songs on there, and that was produced in Los Angeles by Money Mark, who was with the Beastie Boys.
うん
And a year or two ago, I was able to interview him about his process working with them, and he said that they behaved like a seasoned band, that there was no management oversight, that they came in and they worked and they invented and they were producing and writing the lyrics of the songs and such with him in the studio, and that they worked like a traditional band.
ということは、アメリカには AG と同じようなグループがたくさんあるということですか？
No,
うん、
I mean, I think this is part of the appeal, right? That there is a Japaneseness to them which is distinctly theirs, while also being individualistic and creative. And there isn't an equivalent here. I think we're seeing more sort of startup bands. I think of, many of which are somewhat countercultural, like the Linda Lindas and those kind of groups, which are, female driven. But I don't see them having a kind of breakout success in the US. The problem with the US, as usual, is that it is so big and there are so many different populations effectively within the country. And unlike Japan, which is still to a large extent a kind of monoculture, right?
うん、
That sense that, and the UK is very similar. in this respect, that there's still a sense that everybody's watching the same things on television and listening to the same music. Obviously, not everybody and not all the same, but there's more of that. There's more of a sense of a mainstream culture in
うん、
Japan.
う
In
ん、
the US, there isn't
うん、
because, depending on where you are and when I walk around the neighborhood and I can hear the music that people are listening to, and I know almost none of it because they're each different area represents a completely different culture. Like on the building sites and such, where most of the laborers are Latino, and they're all listening to Mexican music, and it's totally different from anything that I would normally listen to. But also, the hip hop culture and the country music, and it's like if you are part of those cultures, the chances of you listening to things outside those cultures is very slim. So we don't have the same kind of sense of a phenomenon that everybody is aware of in this country. Even when somebody becomes really, really big, there's a good chance that most of the country still don't know who they are.
あなたの文学的な面に AG が与えたものはありますか？ AG によって何かあなたの文学が影響されたものはありますか？
Yeah, I think that it was good for me to find a group that were more clearly connected to Japanese youth culture.
うん。
Because I was writing about Japanese American teens who were starting to connect to Japanese culture. And so AG, I mention a couple of times in the second book as something that Emily Kazuko is starting to get interested in because she's discovering it, and it represents a kind of version of her own identity that she hasn't really engaged with before. But again, it's that sense of energy and youth. So that sense of their youthfulness is what I connected to, and what I particularly enjoyed and wanted to tap into in my writing to reflect that as I'm telling the story of these two teenage Japanese Americans who are starting to discover or explore parts of Japanese culture that they hadn't known about before.
それではもう一度ビデオを見ながらちょっと聞きたいんですけれども、鈴鹿が誰かの手を握ってますけど、これはあなたですか？
It might be. I definitely, I was definitely holding her at one point when she was standing there.
うん。
Um, so it's possible. I don't know if it was that moment, but yes.
OK。
It was an
え
amazing thing. I mean, one of the things that's amazing about that show is that I realized that if we saw them in Japan, we would never be able to get that close,
Yeah.
you know? Um,
Yes.
and and it was a kind of once in a lifetime opportunity because now when they come to the United States, when they play, they're playing much larger venues. It's much harder to get close.
うん。このシーンは AJ が本をプレゼントした瞬間ですけれども、
It was just the one copy, but I had signed it to each member of the group.
あこのシーンでは、鈴鹿が本のタイトルを読んでますね。
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty great.
う
Pretty
ん。
great.
うん。
Because I had been listening to their music while I was writing this book, you know?
うん。
So so yeah, I was very pleased to be able to give them one.
この後もずっと鈴鹿は本を気にしてるように見えます。彼女は文学が好きなんでしょうか？ Do you think?
I think that one of the things that makes her interesting is that she's a real artist, and she does a lot of drawing and sketching and cartoon work and such, in very sort of unconventional ways. So I don't know what they. I mean, some of there are songs from the first albums that have a very poetic sensibility.
うん。
So I think they are alert to words and literature. Whether they read personally or not extensively, I don't know. I I dis I think a lot of groups who travel a lot do read because they're on the road so much. So I hope so. I wish that I could have given them a copy in Japanese.
Yeah.
I think their English has improved a lot in the last couple of years as they have become more focused on the market outside Japan. I don't think their English was particularly great, Suzuka, particularly. But I think her English is much better now and sounds very professional and polished. But yeah, I wish I could have given
Yeah.
this version. Yeah. Mm. Maybe next time.
Yeah.
We should send them one. I would love to be able to send them a copy of the Japanese book.
うん。The last shot. Oh,
Mm.
great.
Yes. So this would be very hard to get in Japan, I think. No?
うん。How do you
Yeah.
feel?
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was. I wanted to speak to. I'm used to meeting, f fairly famous people. So I'm generally not shy,
う
but
ん。
I found it when I actually met them, I was tongue-tied. I found it very difficult to say anything intelligent. So,
うん。
so uh, yeah, it was kind of overwhelming. It's strange when you have been watching a group on nothing but the computer screen
う
for
ん。
years,
うん。
you know, and there's a sense of unreality. It's like they're not real people. And then you meet them in person, you see them in person, and it's kind of overwhelming. It's like I remember when I was on. This is a terrible comparison, but the first time when I went to South Africa and I went on safari, and I remember the first time I saw lions and elephants and zebras and leopards and such, and a part of my brain was surprised to discover that they really existed.
うん。
You know?
I see.
Because you see them in zoos or you see them on television, and a part of you doesn't think that these are wild animals.
う
And then
ん。
you see them, and it's hard. It's like your entire universe has to shift a little bit. I felt the same in this moment where these people who only existed for me on my computer screen are suddenly there in person. And they're real people and they're talking to me. And I was like, what is happening?
うん。このメッセージが伝わるかどうかわかりませんけれども、もしかしたらこれを彼女たちが見るかもしれませんので、何か彼女たちにメッセージはありますか？
Hmm. Yes. Uh, please read our book in Japanese,
うんう
Nihongo
ん。
de, and thank you for inspiring my creativity, my desire to stay connected to young to seishun, a youthful energy and spirit. That's what I get from them more than anything else. So thank you for that.
では私から日本語でぜひ 日本語版の秀樹スミスと日本の妖怪を読んでください。ぜひ差し上げたいです。ぜひ楽しんでほしいです。
That's it. As ever, please like, comment, subscribe. As I said, the Hideki Smith book series, there are 2 books in that series. The first one is out in English and in Japanese and in a bilingual English-Japanese edition. That's called Hideki Smith Demon Queller in English and Hideki Smith to Nihon no Yokai in Japanese. And the second book is out in English, Hideki Smith and the Omukare. We're still working on the Japanese translation. Check out my Patreon page. Thanks to my patrons who make this channel, this unmonetized channel, possible and who get to see these videos in advance of everybody else. Check out my little Dashery store, and that's it. I will talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.